What started as a documentary about dangerous logging quickly became one of reality TV's most controversial shows, complete with fake boat explosions, illegal logging operations caught on camera, a cast member who used his shotgun as a boat paddle, and death rumors that spread across the internet faster than wildfire. From helicopter crashes to federal investigations sparked by episodes themselves, the History Channel's Axemen hid secrets darker and stranger than any swamp Shelby Stanga ever navigated. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about Axemen. Fact 1. A boat fire was completely staged. One of the most dramatic moments in Axemen history turned out to be completely fabricated, and eagle-eyed viewers were the ones who caught the deception. During a particularly intense episode, one of the pontoon boats used by the logging crews suddenly stalled in the middle of a river operation, and within moments, the engine burst into flames in what appeared to be a dangerous and unexpected accident. The crew members scrambled to pour water on the burning engine while shouting about the emergency, and some even had to jump into the water to escape the supposedly life-threatening situation. However, fans who watched the episode closely noticed something very suspicious when they paused and examined the footage frame by frame. The engine that had originally stalled was a mid-1990s Yamaha 20-inch motor, but when the dramatic fire suddenly erupted, the burning engine had mysteriously transformed into a completely different motor, a 15-inch Evinrude 3-cylinder 70-horsepower engine from the mid-1980s. The switch was so obvious that viewers could clearly see the different brands and models between the two engines. Even more telling was what happened when fans froze the video during the fire scene and looked at the supposedly dangerous burning engine. The fuel lines weren't connected to anything, the rigging was completely disconnected, and the steering wasn't even hooked up to the motor. Essentially, the production crew had swapped out the original stalled engine with a completely different one that they then set on fire for dramatic effect, but they forgot to make it look like a functional boat engine. The discovery left fans feeling deceived, especially since the rest of the episode featured the crew talking about how lucky they were that nobody got seriously burned in what they claimed was a terrifying real accident. The incident became a perfect example of how reality television shows sometimes create fake drama, and it made viewers start questioning which other dramatic moments on Axemen might have been staged for entertainment purposes. Fact 2. The show got cast members arrested. Sometimes reality television becomes a little too real, and that's exactly what happened when Axemen accidentally helped law enforcement catch cast members breaking the law. The show featured a logging company called S Aqua Logging, owned and operated by Jimmy Smith, which specialized in recovering sunken logs from riverbeds using diving techniques. This type of underwater logging looked exciting on television, but it turned out that some of their operations weren't entirely legal. On March 13, 2009, officers from the Washington Department of Natural Resources were watching an episode of Axemen when they noticed something suspicious about S Aqua Logging's activities on the Hoquiam River. The crew was shown pulling timber from the riverbed during what appeared to be a normal logging operation, but the DNR officers realized that the company didn't have the proper permits to remove logs from that particular location. Essentially, the television show had just broadcast evidence of illegal logging activities to millions of viewers. The Department of Natural Resources immediately took action and served a search warrant on S Aqua Logging to investigate their operations and recover any illegally salvaged timber. During their investigation, DNR officers seized more than 24 logs that had been pulled from the Hoquiam River without the required permits. According to Jimmy Smith himself, who appeared on the show, these confiscated logs were worth approximately $10,000, making this a significant financial loss for the company. The Public Lands Commissioner at the time, Peter Goldmark, didn't mince words about the situation, stating that these valuable materials belonged to the public and that the illegal logging looked like theft, plain and simple. The incident highlighted an important environmental issue, since sunken logs actually serve as crucial parts of river ecosystems by providing food for fish, harboring insects, trapping sediment, and creating riffles where fish can rest. The irony of the situation was unmistakable. A reality show designed to showcase the logging industry had inadvertently exposed illegal practices and led to criminal charges against its own cast members. Fact 3. Shelby used his shotgun as boat paddle. One of the most bizarre and controversial moments in Axemen history occurred when Shelby Stanga, the colorful swamp logger known as the Swamp Man, was filmed using his shotgun as a boat paddle while navigating through Louisiana's waterways. This incident immediately raised red flags among viewers who understood basic gun safety and boating practices, since using a firearm as a paddle could damage the weapon, create safety hazards, and showed a complete disregard for proper handling of both boats and guns. The scene was so outrageous that it sparked immediate backlash from viewers, particularly those from Louisiana's actual Cajun communities, who felt that Shelby's behavior was giving their culture a bad reputation. Many Louisiana natives pointed out that real Cajuns and swamp dwellers would never treat firearms so carelessly, and they accused the show's producers of creating fake scenarios that made their heritage look foolish and dangerous. Viewers from South Louisiana were especially offended because they felt the show was presenting an inaccurate and insulting portrayal of how people actually live and work in the bayou regions. Shelby Stanga himself was from the Lake Pontchartrain area, which isn't considered a traditional Cajun region, but the show often presented him as representing authentic Louisiana swamp culture. Real Cajuns from Acadiana, Louisiana criticized his exaggerated vocabulary and behavior, saying that people in the bayous don't actually rip through waterways shooting guns carelessly and saying nonsensical phrases every other word. One viewer from the true Cajun regions wrote that watching Shelby's antics felt like a slap in the face to their heritage. The shotgun paddle incident became a perfect example of how reality television sometimes pushes cast members to perform increasingly ridiculous stunts for entertainment value, even when those actions go against common sense and safety practices. Gun safety experts and boating enthusiasts alike pointed out that anyone who truly cares about firearm safety or knows anything about proper boating would stay as far away from such behavior as possible, making it clear that the scene was likely staged for shock value rather than representing any real logging technique. Fact 4. 5 cast members died during production. The reality behind Axemen became tragically real when the show lost 5 cast members to death during its run, making it one of the deadliest reality television series in history. These weren't fictional characters or stunt doubles, but real people whose families and crews had to continue working while dealing with genuine grief and loss, which added an unexpectedly somber dimension to what was supposed to be entertainment television. The first death occurred in November 2012 when Jimmy Smith, who owned and operated S Aqua Logging, lost his battle with cancer at the age of 56. Smith had been fighting the disease for an extended period while still appearing on the show, and his death left his son James to continue the family logging business. The History Channel released a statement saying they were extremely saddened to lose a beloved member of the Axemen family and a truly one-of-a-kind character. The second tragedy struck in September 2013, when helicopter pilot William Bart Colantuono died in a helicopter crash while attempting to lift logs in an Oregon forest. Witnesses reported that Colantuono released the logs before crashing, indicating he knew there was a problem with his aircraft, and they saw a rotor separate from the helicopter before it flipped upside down. The experienced Navy pilot was 54 years old and had appeared in seasons 2 and 3 of the show. The most shocking death came in September 2016 when Gabe Rygard, owner of Rygard Logging, was killed in a 3-vehicle collision on U.S. Highway 101 near Port Angeles, Washington. Gabe was 45 years old and wasn't wearing a seatbelt at the time of the accident. His death was particularly devastating because Rygard Logging had been one of the most prominent crews on the show. The final 2 deaths occurred after the original series ended, with Stacey Robeson passing away in 2018 from undisclosed causes and Dwayne Dethlefs dying of natural causes in December 2019 at age 60. These losses highlighted the genuine dangers that loggers face daily and reminded viewers that behind the television drama were real people working in one of America's most dangerous professions. Fact 5. Title change to Axemen. Internationally, when Axemen crossed the Atlantic to air in the United Kingdom, something strange happened to the show's title that left viewers scratching their heads and wondering why international broadcasters felt the need to make such a seemingly minor but noticeable change. The original American version on the History Channel had always been called Axemen without the letter E, but when the show made its debut on British television, the title was mysteriously changed to Axemen, with an added E at the end of the word axe. This spelling change wasn't just a simple oversight or typo, but appeared to be a deliberate decision made by the British broadcasters who acquired the rights to air the show in the United Kingdom. The show initially aired on the UK version of the History Channel, where it maintained this altered spelling throughout its run on that network. However, the title change became even more puzzling when the show later moved to Channel 5, a terrestrial British television network where it continued to be called Axemen, rather than reverting to the original American spelling. The reason behind this spelling modification remains unclear, though it likely relates to differences between American and British English spelling conventions, since axe with an E is the standard British spelling while axe without the E is more commonly used in American English. However, what makes this particularly odd is that many other American television shows maintain their original American spellings when they air internationally, making the decision to change Axemen's title somewhat unusual in the world of international television distribution. Adding to the mystery, when newer seasons of the show eventually returned to air on the UK's History Channel, the title reverted back to the original American spelling of Axemen without the E. This back-and-forth switching between spellings created confusion among British viewers who might have thought they were watching two different shows, when in reality, it was the same American logging reality series with an inexplicably inconsistent international title that seemed to change depending on which British network was broadcasting it at any given time. Fact 6. Cameras always happened to be there. Sharp-eyed viewers of Axemen began to notice some very suspicious patterns in how the show's dramatic moments were filmed, leading many to question whether the supposedly spontaneous accidents and dangerous situations were actually as unplanned as they appeared to be. The most obvious red flag was how camera crews seemed to have an almost supernatural ability to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time whenever something dramatic happened, especially when massive trees were falling in supposedly unexpected directions. One of the most telling signs that accidents might be staged was the peculiar behavior of the people involved in these incidents, particularly how they would react after getting hurt or being in danger. Viewers noticed that when someone had an accident, they wouldn't immediately call out that they were okay or ask for help like most people would do in a real emergency. Instead, the injured person would remain silent and wait until someone else on the crew called out their name, and only then would they respond with a very clear and audible, "I am okay." That seemed perfectly timed for the cameras and microphones. This strange pattern of waiting to be called before responding became so predictable that longtime viewers started to expect it whenever they saw someone get into trouble on screen. The behavior was completely contrary to normal human instincts, since people who are genuinely hurt or scared typically call out immediately to let others know their condition, rather than waiting patiently for someone else to prompt them. The scripted nature of these responses became even more obvious when viewers realized that the victims could somehow always be heard clearly despite being in noisy forest environments with chainsaws and heavy machinery running nearby. Another major clue that accidents were being staged was the incredible camera positioning that captured these supposedly random events. Professional camera operators would need to know in advance where trees were going to fall in order to set up their equipment in the perfect spots to film the action safely. Yet the show presented these moments as completely unpredictable accidents. The combination of perfect camera angles and the unnatural response patterns from the people involved made it clear to many viewers that the dramatic moments were being carefully planned and rehearsed rather than happening naturally. Fact 7. A cast member worked at Winghouse. One of the most remarkable and inspiring cast members of Axemen had a double life that perfectly illustrated the financial realities of working in reality television, even when you're risking your life in one of America's most dangerous professions. Caitlin Sims, the only female logger featured prominently on the show, was not only battling terminal cystic fibrosis while working in the deadly logging industry, but she was also working as a waitress at Kerr's Winghouse restaurant in Gainesville, Florida, to help pay her bills and support herself. Sims had been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when she was just 4 years old, after her parents had taken her to 27 different doctors by the time she was 2 years old, trying to figure out what was causing her repeated illnesses. The doctors initially told her family that she wouldn't live past 12 years old, but Caitlin defied those predictions and continued to live an incredibly active lifestyle that included not only the physically demanding work of logging, but also the fast-paced environment of restaurant service. The contrast between her two jobs couldn't have been more dramatic. During the day, she might be operating heavy machinery and moving massive logs in dangerous swamp conditions for the Dreadnought's logging crew, and then in the evening she would be serving customers at a restaurant known for its sports bar atmosphere and wing specialties. Winghouse even recognized her unique situation by naming her their Winghouse Girl of the Month for March 2014, acknowledging both her television career and her dedication to raising awareness about cystic fibrosis. What made Caitlin's situation even more extraordinary was that she used her fame from Axemen to advocate for the North Florida chapter of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, turning her reality television platform into a way to educate people about her terminal illness. She had helped organize fundraising events that raised tens of thousands of dollars for cystic fibrosis research, proving that her work at both the restaurant and on the logging crew was part of a larger mission to make the most of whatever time she had while fighting a disease that attacks the lungs, kidneys, pancreas, and other vital organs. Fact 8. Fake relationships were created for drama. Reality television producers often manipulate storylines to create more compelling drama. But Axemen took this practice to an unusual extreme by inventing family relationships that didn't actually exist between cast members. When Caitlin Sims joined the Dreadnought's logging crew in Season 7, the show introduced her to viewers as the cousin of Dave Stone, who was known by his nickname the Kraken, and worked as the crew's primary diver for recovering sunken logs from Florida's rivers. The supposed family connection between Caitlin and Dave was presented as a natural explanation for why she was joining the crew and how she had learned about the dangerous work of underwater log recovery. The show depicted their relationship as a typical family dynamic, with Dave acting as a protective older cousin who was helping to bring Caitlin into the family logging business. This backstory gave viewers a sense that the Dreadnought's crew was a tight-knit group of relatives working together, which fit perfectly with the show's overall theme of family logging operations. However, the truth about their relationship was eventually revealed when producers acknowledged that Caitlin and Dave were not actually related to each other in any way. They were complete strangers who had been brought together specifically for the television show, and the cousin storyline was entirely fabricated to create a more interesting narrative for viewers. The fake family connection was so convincing that many fans of the show never realized they had been misled about this fundamental aspect of the crew's dynamics. This manufactured relationship was part of a broader pattern on Axemen, where producers would create fictional personal connections and backstories to make the logging crews seem more like close-knit families rather than groups of co-workers who happened to be filmed together. The revelation that Dave and Caitlin were actually unrelated highlighted how reality television shows often blur the line between documenting real life and creating entertainment content, even when it means deceiving viewers about basic facts like who is related to whom among the cast members. Fact 9. A Chicago Tribune editor became a logger. One of the most unexpected career changes in Axemen history involved a cast member who went from working in a newspaper office to dismantling massive grain elevators, proving that some people are willing to completely reinvent their lives in pursuit of better health and happiness. Judy Perez, who co-owned Wisconsin Woodchuck with her business partner David Hoza, had spent 28 years working as a reporter and later as an editor for the Chicago Tribune, one of America's most prestigious newspapers, before she decided to leave journalism behind and enter the wood reclamation business. During her nearly 3 decades in the high-pressure world of newspaper journalism, Perez had developed several health problems that were likely related to the stress and sedentary nature of her work environment. She regularly suffered from painful muscle cramps and had developed high blood pressure, both conditions that were affecting her quality of life and making her daily work increasingly difficult to manage. The constant deadlines, long hours spent sitting at a desk, and the intense atmosphere of a major metropolitan newspaper had clearly taken a physical toll on her body. However, something remarkable happened when Perez made the dramatic decision to leave her journalism career and start Wisconsin Woodchuck, a company that specialized in salvaging old-growth lumber from historic structures so the valuable wood could be reused in new construction projects. Almost immediately after she began working in the wood reclamation business, both her muscle cramps and high blood pressure completely disappeared, as if her body was responding positively to the more physical and outdoor-oriented nature of her new profession. The company's main project when they appeared on Axemen was dismantling the Globe Elevator, which had been the largest grain storage facility in the world when it was originally built in the 1880s in Superior, Wisconsin. Perez's daughter Dana commented on her mother's dramatic career change by saying that the whole thing seemed crazy, but acknowledged that her mom was ridiculously capable of handling whatever challenges came her way. The transformation from newspaper editor to lumber salvage expert demonstrated that sometimes the most dramatic life changes can lead to unexpected improvements in both health and happiness. Fact 10. Swamp Man got arrested for tree murder. Shelby Stanga's wild reputation on Axemen took an unexpected turn toward the criminal when he was arrested and hauled off to jail in Louisiana for what can only be described as one of the most unusual charges in reality television history. In October 2014, the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office arrested the infamous Swamp Man on felony theft charges for allegedly cutting down a cypress tree that belonged to his neighbor. But the twist was that this supposed crime had actually happened 3 years earlier. The incident that led to Shelby's arrest occurred when he apparently got a little too enthusiastic with his axe and decided to cut down a cypress tree that was growing in a swamp on his neighbor's property rather than his own land. While this might seem like a simple case of trespassing or property damage, cypress trees in Louisiana are often protected by environmental regulations, and removing them without proper permits can result in serious legal consequences. The fact that Shelby had allegedly committed this botanical violence 3 years before his arrest made the situation even more bizarre. When the authorities finally caught up with him, Shelby was arrested and taken to jail, where he posed for what became a memorable mugshot that perfectly captured his rugged swamp-dwelling appearance. The media coverage of his arrest included headlines that jokingly referred to the charges as felony botanical violence, since he had essentially been accused of murdering his neighbor's tree. The Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office confirmed that there had been a felony warrant out for Shelby's arrest ever since he had taken down the protected cypress tree. Fortunately for the Swamp Man, his stay in jail was brief, and he was released the same day he was arrested. However, he still faced the felony theft charge related to the valuable cypress tree that he had allegedly stolen from his neighbor's swamp. The entire situation highlighted the sometimes blurry lines between traditional swamp living practices and modern environmental protection laws, while also providing fans with yet another example of how Shelby's larger-than-life personality sometimes led him into trouble with the law. Fact 11. Cast used guns for underwater logging. One of the most unusual and seemingly dangerous techniques shown on Axemen involved the Dreadnought's logging crew using firearms as a tool for their underwater logging operations, which made their work look more like something out of a pirate adventure story than a modern professional logging operation. The crew, which was headed by Clint Roberts and worked primarily on Florida's Withlacoochee River, had developed what they claimed was an effective method for locating valuable sunken logs that had been resting on the river bottom for decades. The technique involved crew members firing revolvers directly into the water while listening carefully to the sound that the gunshots made as they echoed back from whatever was beneath the surface. According to the Dreadnought's crew, different types of objects on the river bottom would produce different echoing sounds when the gunshots hit them, and experienced loggers could supposedly tell the difference between the sound of a bullet hitting a sunken log versus hitting mud, rocks, or other debris on the river floor. This method of using gunfire to locate underwater logs was presented as a legitimate and time-tested technique that the crew had been using for over 4 years while working to recover timber from the Withlacoochee River. The crew consisted of diver Dave Stone, who went by the nickname the Kraken, and deckhand Chris Miller, who was known as the River Guide, both of whom apparently relied on this acoustic detection method to guide their diving and log recovery operations. While the show presented this gun-based detection system as a serious professional technique, many viewers found it difficult to believe that firing weapons into water could provide reliable information about what was lying on the river bottom. The method seemed more like folklore or an old wives' tale than something that would actually be used by modern logging professionals, especially considering that there are much more sophisticated and safer ways to survey underwater areas using sonar and other electronic detection equipment. The fact that the crew was using revolvers for this purpose rather than more conventional surveying tools added to the sense that this technique was either completely made up for television or represented an extremely outdated approach to underwater logging operations. Fact 12. 2 professional crews got fired. One of the most revealing behind-the-scenes stories from Axemen exposed how reality television producers sometimes prioritize manufactured drama over authentic professional expertise, which became clear when Gustafson Logging was quietly dropped from the show after appearing in the first season. The Gustafson crew, which included brothers Mark and Clay Gustafson along with their foreman Daryl Holthison, had participated in the inaugural season of the show and were initially excited about the opportunity to showcase their logging operations to a national television audience. Mark Gustafson later explained that when the production company first approached them, he was thrilled about the chance to demonstrate what real logging crews actually do in the dangerous forests of the Pacific Northwest. The crew was proud of their professionalism and work ethic, and Mark didn't have to tell his workers to watch their language or act differently for the cameras because they naturally conducted themselves in a professional manner that made him proud to own Gustafsson Logging. However, when the producers contacted Gustafsson Logging about participating in the second season, the crew brought up some concerns about their contract and requested certain changes to how they would be portrayed on the show. According to the Gustafsson brothers, this led to them never being contacted again by the production company, effectively ending their involvement with Axemen after just one season. Clay Gustafsson revealed what he believed was the real reason they weren't invited back, when he explained that the show had shifted away from focusing on the actual logging industry and the genuine dangers that loggers face every day. Instead, the producers became more interested in highlighting dysfunctional relationships and interpersonal drama between crew members and bosses. The show was moving toward emphasizing conflict and arguments rather than showcasing the skill, expertise, and teamwork that real logging operations require. Mark Gustafsson acknowledged that if his crew was considered too boring for television because they were too professional and didn't create enough drama, he was perfectly okay with that outcome. He felt that the show did provide valuable insight into how dangerous and difficult logging work can be, but he wasn't willing to compromise his company's professional standards just to create entertainment value for television viewers. Fact 13. Mike Pyle's do-I involved his own children. One of the most troubling incidents involving an Axemen cast member occurred in 2009 when Mike Pyle, owner of Mike Pyle Logging, got into a serious alcohol-related accident that put his own children in danger and resulted in criminal charges that had nothing to do with driving under the influence. The incident happened when Pyle was driving his Jeep while under the influence of alcohol with his 3 young children as passengers, a situation that would have been dangerous under any circumstances but became much worse when the vehicle flipped over during the accident. The crash was severe enough that one of Pyle's children became pinned underneath the Jeep's roll bar, creating a terrifying situation where the child was trapped and could have been seriously injured or killed. Fortunately, none of the 3 children suffered life-threatening injuries, though they were all hurt in the accident and required medical attention. The fact that Pyle had been drinking before getting behind the wheel with his own kids in the vehicle made the incident particularly shocking to fans of the show who had watched him work as a professional logger. What made the legal consequences of this accident unusual was that it occurred on private property rather than on a public road, which meant that the normal laws regarding driving under the influence didn't apply in the same way they would have if the crash had happened on a highway or city street. Because of this legal technicality, the police were unable to charge Pyle with driving under the influence, even though it was clear that alcohol had been a factor in the accident that injured his children. However, the authorities did file other serious charges against Pyle that reflected the severity of what had happened to his kids during the crash. He was charged with third-degree assault and 3 separate counts of reckless driving that endangered another person, with each count representing one of his 3 children who had been put at risk by his decision to drive while intoxicated. These charges acknowledged that while the location of the accident prevented a standard DUI prosecution, Pyle's actions had still constituted criminal behavior that endangered the lives of his own children. Fact 14. A master diver was an illegal monkey fisher. Before Roger Gunter became known to television audiences as the master diver for Chapman Logging on Axemen, he had already established quite a reputation in Florida for engaging in some highly questionable and illegal fishing practices that earned him a colorful nickname and multiple run-ins with law enforcement. Gunter was well known in certain circles as a monkey fisher, which despite its amusing name refers to the dangerous and illegal practice of using electricity to catch fish, rather than anything involving actual monkeys, as some confused writers have mistakenly suggested. Monkey fishing involves using electrical current to stun fish in the water, making them easy to catch, but this method is illegal in most places because it can be extremely dangerous to both the person doing it and to the aquatic ecosystem. The practice can electrocute anyone who happens to be in the water at the wrong time, and it also kills or injures many fish that aren't intended to be caught, making it both a safety hazard and an environmental problem that wildlife authorities take very seriously. Over a period of 30 to 40 years, Gunter had been caught engaging in this illegal fishing practice a total of 6 times by law enforcement officers, which he later referred to somewhat proudly as not being too bad a record considering how long he had been doing it. His casual attitude toward getting caught suggests that monkey fishing was a regular activity for him rather than just an occasional lapse in judgment, and that he viewed the occasional arrest as simply part of the cost of doing business. In addition to his history with illegal fishing techniques, Gunter had also been caught hunting without the proper licenses, adding to his record of wildlife violations and showing a pattern of disregarding hunting and fishing regulations. However, according to Gunter himself, he had apparently reformed his ways by the time he appeared on Axemen and was no longer engaging in these illegal activities. His transition from illegal monkey fishing to legitimate underwater logging work for Chapman Logging represented a significant career change that kept his diving skills sharp while staying on the right side of the law. Fact 15. Death rumors spread faster than facts. The internet's tendency to turn minor incidents into major tragedies became painfully obvious when false reports about Shelby Stanga's death spread across social media multiple times, demonstrating how reality television drama can quickly spiral into dangerous misinformation that leaves fans genuinely worried about their favorite cast members. These death rumors typically started when Shelby had minor accidents during filming for Axemen, but instead of being reported accurately as small injuries, the stories grew and transformed as they spread online until many people became convinced that the Swamp Man had actually died. The most persistent rumors claimed that Shelby had been killed in various logging accidents while cameras were rolling, with some versions suggesting he had drowned in the swamp, been crushed by falling trees, or died in boat crashes during his dangerous log recovery operations. These false stories gained so much traction on social media platforms that fans began posting tributes and sharing memories of Shelby, genuinely believing that they were mourning the loss of a beloved television personality who was actually still alive and working. What made these death hoaxes particularly believable was that they often contained just enough real details to seem credible, such as mentioning actual accidents that had occurred during filming or referencing specific episodes where Shelby had gotten into dangerous situations. However, the reality was that while Shelby had indeed suffered some minor injuries and close calls during his time on the show, he had always walked away from these incidents without any life-threatening harm. The phenomenon became so widespread that Shelby himself and his representatives occasionally had to address the rumors directly to reassure fans that he was still alive and well. The repeated false death reports highlighted how the dramatic nature of reality television, combined with the speed at which information spreads online, can create a perfect storm for misinformation that genuinely distresses fans who have become emotionally invested in the lives of cast members. As of 2024, Shelby Stanga is very much alive at 64 years old, still living his unique lifestyle in the Louisiana swamps. Despite the numerous internet rumors that have incorrectly reported his demise over the years,